We're going to pick up on thermal modalities and starting with when we're going to use a thermal modality. And keep in mind, thermal is talking about heat. So when are we going to use some modality that has a warming, a heat effect? So our kind of general rule of thumb is when it is okay to use heat. If you are in the subacute or chronic phases of healing. We don't want to be in the acute phase, that first 72 hours, because we already have the increase in blood flow that is normal with the healing phases, that if we increase heat during that phase, we're going to have an abundance of blood flow, making our edema way more than it should be. We also want to use heat if we are trying to encourage tissue healing. We just talked about in our last video that heat increases cellular activity and cellular metabolism. And so if we apply heat, it's going to start that healing process and get the ball rolling faster. Heat will also help to improve your range of motion. It helps to increase the extensibility, the elasticity of your muscles, your tendons, your ligaments. And so if you heat the area, you will, in theory, have more range of motion, just in general be able to move a little bit better. And the last rule of thumb is if you want to promote drainage, okay, trying to get an infection out. I know it's kind of gross, but the way I think about this is popping a pimple. It's a whole lot easier to pop a pimple if you've gotten the area warm, moist and warm before you try to actually pop it, because it is changing basically the makeup of that area. So we see this, thankfully not too often, but we do see this with situations like staph, when we have infections in the body and we're trying to get that infection out. Okay, I saw this little picture here, and I really liked the way that it kind of has given us a little bit of a heads up. If you want, you can use heat if you have muscle spasms, muscle tightness, muscle aching, muscle stiffness, okay? The only thing I don't super love is pain, okay? Heat will help pain, but if you are in that acute phase, it trumps all of that, okay? You don't want to apply heat in that acute phase of an injury, okay? So the next slide we have is the effects. What is actually going on in our body when we are using heat? So a couple of these we're going to see work no matter if we're dealing with a thermal modality or if we're dealing with cold, okay? But regardless, when we are using heat, we do have the ability to decrease pain and decrease muscle spasms. That's a big one, okay? We talked about in our last chapter muscle guarding, muscle spasms, that kind of stuff. Heat is going to help relax everything, okay? So you guys, if you look down here, you'll see local heat application. Okay, local is going to be talking about heat applied to a specific area. If I have a moist heat pack on this shoulder is not getting warm. Okay, it is a local reaction, just to that general area. So going on in that area, we have an increase in body temperature in that area, an increase in our heart rate, an increase in our breathing rate. Now this is going to depend on how big of an area we are heating, okay? Every time I put a moist heat pack on my foot, it doesn't mean that I'm going to have increased respiration. It is also going to decrease our blood pressure because we're opening up our arteries and our veins, and so things are flowing nice and smooth. As a reminder, we do have that temperature gradient, which is just the difference between the tissue temperature and the modality itself. We said that 91 degrees is kind of our average skin temperature. If the modality is 110, then your body is going to heat up as that modality gets cooler until that temperature matches, okay? Because you have the temperature of your skin is heating up, but you are losing heat in your modality. So another little good image that I found was heat helps to relax the muscle spasms. It helps to reduce chronic pain. I like that better than the last one. Improve circulation. We're opening up all of our capillaries and our arteries that help to get the blood flowing throughout our body. It also talks about the infrarays, but that's a little bit more than what we use in the high school setting. Here, it's a little bit more in the college setting. So heat modalities and the heat receptors. Remember we talked about heat receptors in our last video. So in order for you to have the most benefit from your modality treatment, okay, you need to have a rapidly increase in those in the temperature with those heat receptors, okay? Quick heat rather than gradual heat. So I think about hot tub, okay? If you're the kind of person that just puts your toe in and then the next toe and then your ankle and you're slowly getting in, your body's getting used to that, okay? Well, if your body is getting used to it, you're not necessarily going to get the heat as deep down to the tissue that you need. On the other hand, if you are the jumper in cannonball and you just jump in, your body goes from normal to increase in temperature in no time. Okay, so this is saying in order to have the maximum benefit, it needs to be the quicker heat rather than the slowly warming up, slowly getting there. Okay, maybe we started with a nice warm moist heat pack and then we got, into the whirlpool. Okay, that kind of thing. So just kind of keep that in mind. Also, if the temperature increases too slowly, the blood flow will keep those temperatures low because your blood is rushing through the body. So just like when we talked about with convection, your body is heating that fluid near that moist heat pack, but it's constantly going to keep flowing back to my heart, back to the rest of my body. So if it's too slow, you're not ever going to heat that area because it's constantly being replaced by the next round of fluid. Okay, so it does need to be hotter temperatures, I guess, is the best way I can think about that. It needs to be warmer to get that benefit. All right. However, on the opposite side of things, if it is increased too fast, we have what we call these wide dynamic range thermoreceptors. And these are the ones that go bells ringing crazy off when you are in something too hot, way too fast, okay? And so I always thinking about this of boiling water. Okay, when I am messing with a pot of boiling water and I go to dump it, and I get some water on myself, I know instantly, ouch, it's hot, it's burning, I'm in pain. Okay, instant. That is a reaction of the wide dynamic range thermoreceptors. Okay, so those are kind of like the panic button. So just as a general rule of thumb, we do have a little information here on our treatment time. During the first 5 to 6 minutes, your body is going to absorb the heat faster. Okay, because you're going from a big difference. All right, you're 91 degrees and you're 110, 120, depending on what your modality is you're using. All right, so it is going to have a bigger effect. After, my nose is running, sorry guys. After about 7 to 9 minutes, you start to have that little change and they start evening back out. Okay, so I always think of our athletes that sit in the athletic training room for like 30 minutes with a moist heat pack on their body. Chances are it's not very effective anymore. So we do have a term associated with heat-related conditions called rebound vasoconstriction. Okay, well, we've seen the word vasoconstriction before. Vasoconstriction is talking about our blood vessels constricting and dilating. Okay, constricting, dilating. So when maximal vasodilation has occurred, meaning My arteries, my capillaries are wide open. I can't get any more blood through these, all right? Your body is going to start saying too much. I've had enough. I'm going to start constricting, all right? And this is just your body's way of protecting itself, okay? Because if I have that increase in blood flow, that increase in that body temperature, I could burn tissues, okay? I could burn tissues. And so your body is going to start using this as a shut-off mechanism, all right? We see this also with cold.
It's 12 o'clock.
Okay, we also see this with cold. It's just kind of the opposite reaction. We see adipose tissue, which is fat, okay, is a primary limiting factor for how far the heat is going to get into your body. Remember the law of Grothes-Draper. It's got to be able to pass through one layer before it can get to the next. And if we have too much adipose tissue in between, let's say the skin and the muscle or the ligament that you're trying to reach with your treatment, it's not going to be effective. You're just going to heat the fat instead, okay? And that's not really like an obese thing. That's just you knowing what your target is with your treatment, okay? Tissue rewarming. So skin and the adipose, the fat tissue, tends to rapidly decrease in temperature as soon as you remove the heat. So again, back to those athletes that have 30 minutes on the moist heat pack because it makes them feel good. Those effects don't last. So as soon as they take the heat off, they're back to normal, okay? So superficial intermuscular temperature remains elevated for only about 30 minutes after the treatment. So if you've got the heat deep enough into the muscle, that's only going to last 30 minutes. I always think this is interesting because when we use heat several hours before our event, what are we doing that for? Just think about that for a second. And our last slide before we go into the specific modalities is going to be it's going to be talking about the injury response process. Okay, we've talked about it before. Heat is used to increase the cell metabolism. Okay, everything starts moving. We start the healing process going. Everything is moving faster. If heat is applied too soon in an injury, like we're still in that acute process, we are increasing that cell metabolism too much, and we're increasing the number of cells that are involved that we can get a condition called hypoxia. Hypoxia is referring to lack of oxygen in the cells, which means that the cells are going to die. Anything without oxygen is going to die. A little fun fact for you. For an increase of 18 degrees in skin temperature, the cell metabolism rate increases 2 to 3 times. Okay, it's only 18-degree difference. So if you add heat, you're going to have that increase in cell metabolism. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind when we're thinking about our treatment plan. Next time you see me, we'll be talking about the heat modalities.